A light October rain fell over Manhattan, the kind that turns the entire city silver and reflective. The sidewalks along Fifth Avenue shimmered under streetlights, black umbrellas moving like a silent procession. Limousines lined the curb outside St. Bartholomew's Church, engines humming softly. And I just stood there. My name is Sarah Whitmore. I'm 32 years old. And today, I was attending my father's funeral, feeling like a guest at my own family's tragedy. The heavy wooden church doors opened. The scent of polished mahogany mixed with white lilies filled the air. At the front of the sanctuary sat my father's closed casket. Daniel Whitmore, real estate titan, architect of half the Manhattan skyline, a billionaire visionary, and the most complicated man I had ever loved. In the first row sat my stepmother, Victoria Whitmore, black designer veil, diamond studs, perfect makeup, not a single tear. She didn't look broken. She looked prepared. I walked down the aisle, heels echoing against marble, and took the seat beside her. She turned her head slowly and smirked. "You came," she said softly. "It's my father's funeral," I replied. Her gloved hand rested on mine. Cold. Calculated. "Just remember something, Sarah," she whispered. "You were never really part of this family." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" But the organ music began, drowning my question in grief-soaked notes. Still, her words echoed louder than the choir. The burial took place in a private cemetery in Queens, reserved for families whose names are etched into buildings and political donations. The sky was gray, the wind sharp. As the casket was lowered into the ground, Victoria stepped close to me. She lifted her veil just enough so I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. "You're not in the will," she said with a faint smile. Everything inside me froze. What? Daniel left everything to me. The penthouse, the Hamptons house, the company's shares, everything. "That's not possible," I said. "I'm his daughter." "Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty," she replied coolly. "How many times did you see him in the last 3 years?" The truth hit hard. We had grown distant. His empire consumed him. His control suffocated me. And Victoria, she slowly replaced every space I once held. But cutting me out entirely? No. That wasn't my father. From behind us, a calm voice spoke. "Ms. Whitmore? Ms. Sarah Whitmore." We turned. A man in a black overcoat approached, leather briefcase in hand. Silver hair. Measured steps. "I'm Robert Klein, your father's estate attorney." Victoria's composure sharpened. "Perfect timing, Robert. The official reading is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at our Manhattan office," he said. "Both of you must be present." Victoria nodded confidently. I stood there in silence. After everyone left, I remained by the grave. The fresh soil. The cold wind. My father's name engraved in stone. "Dad," I whispered. "If this is true, why—" My tears mixed with the rain. Behind me, Victoria's heels clicked against wet pavement, steady and victorious. The next morning, Manhattan was bright and indifferent. Sunlight reflected off skyscrapers as if nothing had happened. I left my modest Brooklyn apartment alone. No chauffeur. No security. Just me and the subway. I worked at a nonprofit legal aid office. I helped people who couldn't afford lawyers. I had chosen a simple life, far from my father's billion-dollar empire. The law firm's office was on the 27th floor near 42nd Street. Glass walls. Minimalist decor. Cold professionalism. Victoria was already seated when I entered. Champagne silk blouse. Perfect posture. "Good morning," she said sweetly. I sat across from her. Robert Klein opened the file. "This is the last will and testament of Daniel Whitmore, dated March 3rd of last year." March 3rd. I had been in Texas that month for a legal project. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Robert began reading. "To my beloved wife, Victoria Whitmore, I leave the Manhattan penthouse, the Hamptons property, and controlling shares of Whitmore Developments. Victoria's smile widened. My heart sank. However, the room went silent. Victoria straightened. There exists a supplementary clause, Robert continued, to be disclosed only in the presence of both parties. Victoria frowned. Supplementary clause? Robert removed a sealed envelope. Daniel instructed this remain confidential. Just read it, Victoria snapped. Robert adjusted his glasses. To my daughter, Sarah Whitmore. Victoria's face drained of color. If she accepts the conditions stated herein, she shall inherit 51% controlling interest in Whitmore Developments. The heir left the room. What is this? Victoria demanded. I swallowed. What's the condition? Robert read carefully. Sarah must relocate to Chicago for 1 year and personally oversee the redevelopment project in the South Halsted District, a project currently under federal investigation. I blinked. Federal investigation? Victoria stood abruptly. Daniel never told me about this. There are suspicions of financial irregularities, Robert said calmly. If Sarah completes the project legally and ethically within 1 year, the controlling shares transfer to her. This wasn't an inheritance. It was a test. Or a trap. Victoria leaned toward me. Don't be naive. You work in legal aid. Corporate boardrooms will eat you alive. I met her gaze. Or maybe, I said quietly, you're afraid. She laughed sharply. You can't survive that world. Robert looked at me. Ms. Whitmore, do you accept the condition? Silence. I remembered being 10 years old, standing beside my father at a construction site. He placed a hard hat on my head. To build an empire, he said, you need courage. I had spent my life trying not to become him. Maybe it was time to find out who he really was. I looked at Robert. I accept. Victoria's expression hardened. Fine, she said coldly. Game on. That night, I stood on the Brooklyn Bridge. The Manhattan skyline glittered across the East River, buildings my father helped shape. The empire could either make me or destroy me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. If you go to Chicago, you won't come back the same. My stomach tightened. Another message appeared. Your father didn't die of a heart attack. My breath stopped. A third message flashed. He was about to expose someone. The wind grew colder. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow. Measured. I turned. A shadow stood in the darkness. And a voice said only one word. Run. The word echoed in my ears long after the man disappeared into the darkness. Run. The Brooklyn Bridge suddenly felt too exposed. Too open. The wind whipped harder, tugging at my coat, like it was trying to drag me backward. Wait. I called out. But the shadow was already gone, swallowed by the steel beams and city noise. My heart pounded. I looked down at my phone again. Unknown number. No name. No history. I typed quickly. Who is this? The message showed as delivered. No response. Cars rushed past behind me. Manhattan glittered like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. But something had. And I had just stepped into it. The next morning, I called Robert Klein. I need the coroner's report, I said without greeting. There was a pause. Sarah, the official cause of death was cardiac arrest. Official? Another pause. You're implying something serious. I got a message, I said, saying my father didn't die of a heart attack. Silence. Forward it to me, Robert finally replied. And Sarah, be careful. If Daniel is looking into something, there may be people who don't want it uncovered. That wasn't comforting. By noon, I was at my father's Manhattan penthouse. Victoria had moved in completely. Fresh orchids. Modern art rearranged. My childhood photos gone. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park when I walked in. You don't live here, she said without turning. Not yet. She gave a soft laugh. You're really doing this? Chicago? That project is toxic. Why? Because it's messy, she replied. Federal auditors. Angry residents. Corrupt subcontractors. Daniel tried to fix it quietly. It spiraled. And you didn't know? She turned slowly. I knew enough. There it was. Not innocence. Not shock. Calculation. Did he suspect someone? I asked. Victoria's jaw tightened. Daniel suspected everyone. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. 3 days later, I landed in Chicago. Cold wind hit my face the moment I stepped outside O'Hare Airport. The skyline rose in the distance, sharp and powerful against Lake Michigan's steel-blue waters. Chicago wasn't Manhattan. It felt grittier, more honest. The South Halsted district sat on the city's industrial edge. Old brick warehouses, abandoned lots, rusted rail tracks. Whitmore Developments had promised luxury mixed-income housing, retail space, jobs. Instead, half-finished structures stood like skeletons. Scaffolding wrapped around concrete frames. Graffiti covered temporary walls. A banner flapped violently in the wind. Whitmore Redevelopment Project. It felt ironic. Inside the site office trailer, I met the regional project manager, Mark Delgado, mid-40s, broad shoulders, wary eyes. So, he said, arms crossed, you're the daughter. I'm here to oversee the project. He studied me. You look more like a social worker than a developer. I'm a lawyer. Even worse. I almost smiled. Tell me what's really happening here, Mark. He hesitated. Budget overruns. Contractors walking off. Inspectors finding code violations. And then the feds showed up. For what? Money laundering suspicion. The words hit like ice water. Through our project? That's the rumor. That night, I checked into a small high-rise apartment overlooking the Chicago River. Nothing flashy. Just clean lines and cold glass views. I opened my laptop and began digging. Financial reports. Contractor agreements. Wire transfers. One name kept appearing. A subcontracting firm. Hawthorne Infrastructure, LLC. Large payments. Vague invoices. I searched the ownership records. The registered agent was hidden behind shell corporations. But one detail stood out. The firm was formed 2 years ago. The same year Victoria joined the board of Whitmore Developments. Coincidence? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You're looking in the right place. My pulse spiked. Hawthorne isn't what it seems. I typed back. Who are you? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No reply. The next morning, I visited the construction site again. Residents had gathered outside the chain-link fence. Protest signs. Stop corporate greed. Where did the money go? We were promised homes. A woman in her 50s stepped toward me. You with Whitmore? Yes. You people shut down our local grocery store for this project. Said we'd get affordable housing. Now it's just concrete and lies. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. That hit harder. I'm here to fix it, I said. She looked at me skeptically. They all say that. I didn't argue, because she was right. Later that afternoon, Mark burst into my temporary office. You need to see this. He handed me a folder. Inside were internal audit notes, flagged transactions, large wire transfers routed through Hawthorne Infrastructure, destination accounts, offshore, Cayman Islands. My stomach dropped. Did my father authorize these? Mark shook his head. Signature approvals were digital. Could have been anyone with executive access. Executive access. Board-level clearance. Victoria had that. So did Daniel. And 2 other board members. I leaned back in my chair. Who else knew about this? Federal investigators. Quietly. And they were planning subpoenas. When Mark hesitated. The week your father died. The room felt smaller. You're saying... I'm saying the timing is interesting. That night, I couldn't sleep. Chicago's city lights reflected off the river outside my window. I replayed everything. Victoria's smirk, the secret clause, the federal investigation, the offshore transfers. Another message buzzed. Check the autopsy again. My hands trembled. Look at the toxicology report. I immediately pulled up the coroner's file Robert had sent earlier. Cardiac arrest. Age, 62. History of stress-related hypertension. Scrolling. Toxicology. Standard panel negative. But one line caught my attention. Trace levels of digoxin detected. My breath caught. Digoxin. A heart medication. In high doses, it can stop a heart. My father wasn't prescribed digoxin. I knew that. He hated medication. Another message appeared. He didn't take it willingly. My heart slammed against my ribs. Who was this person? And how did they know? Suddenly, a knock at my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. My entire body went still. It was almost midnight. No one here knew my exact unit number. Another knock. I walked quietly toward the door. Who is it? Silence. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. Open the door, Sarah. We need to talk. My blood ran cold. It was Victoria. And she was supposed to be in New York. I slowly unlocked the door. She stood there in a long black coat, Chicago wind behind her. Her eyes weren't calm anymore. They were sharp. You've been digging, she said. I didn't answer. She stepped inside without invitation. You think Daniel was murdered? It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Was he? I asked. Her lips tightened. You have no idea what you're stepping into. Then tell me. She moved closer. Lowered her voice. If you continue this investigation, you won't just lose the company. A beat. You'll lose your life. The words hung heavy between us. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Victoria's eyes flickered to the screen. Another message appeared. Don't trust her. Victoria's gaze snapped back to mine. What did you just receive? My heart pounded. Because, for the first time, she looked afraid. Victoria was still staring at my phone. What did you just receive? She asked again, slower this time. The Chicago skyline glowed behind her through the glass windows. River lights shimmered below us, but inside my apartment, the air felt tight, compressed. Spam, I said calmly, locking my screen. She didn't believe me. You think this is a game? She stepped closer. You think digging into Daniel's death makes you powerful? I think someone poisoned my father. Her jaw clenched. You don't know that. I know he wasn't prescribed digoxin. For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria's composure cracked, just slightly. That report isn't conclusive. Trace levels don't appear out of nowhere. She exhaled sharply and walked toward the window, staring down at the river. You need to understand something, she said quietly. Daniel made enemies. Powerful ones. If the feds were circling that project, it wasn't just about money. Then what was it about? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned. If you walk away from Chicago now, I'll make sure you receive a generous settlement. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. There it was. A payoff. You're offering me money, I said, to ignore my father's possible murder? I'm offering you survival. I stepped closer. And what are you trying to survive, Victoria? Her eyes hardened. You're not ready for the truth. She walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused. Be careful who you trust here, Sarah. The door shut behind her. The silence felt heavier than before. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She knows you're close. My heart hammered. Meet me tomorrow. 8 p.m. Navy Pier. Come alone. The next day passed like a slow-burning fuse. I spent the morning at the project site reviewing financial ledgers. The deeper I dug, the uglier it became. Wire transfers routed through Hawthorne infrastructure. Consulting fees paid to shell companies. Signatures authorized through executive credentials. But there was something new. One payment, $12.8 million, transferred 3 days before my father died. Approved under Victoria's executive login. I stared at the timestamp. 11:43 p.m. My father was still alive then. Why would she move that amount right before federal subpoenas were expected? Mark walked into the trailer. You look like you've seen a ghost. Did my father ever question Victoria's access to the accounts? Mark hesitated. About a month before he died, they had a fight. Loud enough the entire executive floor heard it. About what? Control. That word echoed. Control. By evening, Chicago's temperature had dropped sharply. Wind coming off Lake Michigan sliced through layers of clothing. Navy piers stretched out into the dark water, Ferris wheel glowing against the night sky. Tourists had mostly cleared out. Only scattered couples and joggers remained. 8:02 p.m. I stood near the railing, heart racing. On time, a voice said behind me. I turned. A man in his late 30s. Dark jacket. Baseball cap low over his face. Who are you? My name doesn't matter. It matters to me. He hesitated. Ethan Cole. The name didn't ring a bell. You've been texting me? Yes. Why? Because Daniel was about to expose something. And I worked with him. My pulse spiked. In what capacity? I'm a forensic accountant. Independent contractor. Daniel hired me 6 months ago. For what? Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice as wind howled around us. To audit Hawthorne infrastructure quietly. And it wasn't just money laundering. My stomach tightened. What was it? Campaign financing. The world seemed to tilt. Political? Yes. Federal level. Pieces began connecting. Large offshore transfers. Shell companies. Urgent subpoenas. They were using the redevelopment project to funnel money into political campaigns, Ethan continued. Illegal donations masked as construction expenses. And my father found out? He didn't just find out. He had proof. My breath caught. Who was involved? Ethan looked directly at me. Board members. Hawthorne executives. And someone very close to Daniel. Victoria. I can't prove that, he said carefully. But Daniel believed someone inside the company betrayed him. Why didn't he go to the authorities? He was preparing to. When? The week he died. Cold realization flooded me. You think they killed him? I think Daniel was poisoned to silence him. The Ferris wheel lights reflected in Ethan's serious eyes. And you're telling me this now because? Because once you accepted Chicago, they panicked. They. Whoever's behind Hawthorne. A sharp wind gusted between us. What do you want from me? I asked. Finish what Daniel started. And you? I'm already in too deep. Before I could respond, a black SUV rolled slowly along the pier road. Tinted windows. Engine idling. Ethan's expression changed instantly. They found me. What? Go. Now. The SUV door opened. 2 men stepped out. Dark coats. Purposeful walk. My heart slammed. Ethan grabbed my arm. Run. We took off in opposite directions. Footsteps pounded behind us. I heard shouting. Stop. I ran toward the crowded main walkway. My lungs burned. My boots slipped slightly on cold pavement. I didn't look back. Not until I heard something that froze my blood. A gunshot. The sound cracked across the water. People screamed. I turned. The 2 men were rushing back toward the SUV. And Ethan. He was on the ground. Not moving. The SUV sped off. I ran toward him, dropping to my knees. Ethan. Blood spread across his jacket. His breathing was shallow. They know about you, he whispered. Stay with me. His hand gripped my sleeve weakly. Your father trusted you. I wasn't there. I choked out. Yes, you were. His grip loosened. Sirens wailed in the distance.
Ethan.
Ethan, but his eyes went still. Lake Michigan wind roared around us as blue and red lights reflected off the water. I knelt there, shaking. This wasn't corporate politics anymore. This was murder. And I was next. My phone buzzed again in my coat pocket. I almost couldn't bring myself to look. But I did. Unknown number. Now you understand. My hands trembled violently. Another message appeared seconds later. Leave Chicago. Final warning. I looked up at the dark skyline. They thought fear would send me running. They didn't know something. I had already lost my father. And now Ethan. There was nothing left to scare me with. Across the flashing police lights, I saw something else. Parked 2 blocks away. A familiar silhouette stepping out of a taxi.
Tall.
Elegant. Black coat. Victoria. She stood at a distance, watching the chaos. Watching me. And when our eyes locked across the crowd, she didn't look shocked. She looked calculating. As if she was measuring how much I knew. The police pulled me back as paramedics surrounded Ethan's body. But I couldn't look away from her. Because in that moment, I realized something chilling. She wasn't surprised by the gunshot. She was surprised that I was still alive. Chicago police lights drowned Navy Pier in red and blue flashes. The wind off Lake Michigan howled across the water, sharp and relentless. Tourists scattered. Sirens layered over distant screams. Radios crackled. The chaos spread like wildfire. And I was on my knees. Ethan's blood stained my hands. "Ma'am, step back," an officer ordered, pulling me away. Paramedics rushed in. Oxygen mask. Compressions. Urgency. But I already knew. He was gone. My phone vibrated again in my coat pocket. Unknown number. This is bigger than you thought. My fingers trembled as I locked the screen. Across the flashing lights, beyond the crowd, I saw her.
Victoria.
Black coat. Perfect posture. Watching. Not shocked. Not horrified. Watching. When our eyes met, she turned calmly, stepped into a taxi, and disappeared into Chicago traffic. Like this was just another boardroom development. 3:07 a.m., downtown Chicago Police Department. Fluorescent lights. Gray walls. Metal table. "Miss Whitmore, how did you know the victim?" Detective Ramirez asked. "He was a forensic accountant," I replied. "He worked with my father." "Witnesses say you were speaking privately." "Yes."
About what?
"Financial discrepancies within my father's company." The detective leaned back slightly. "You understand this looks like targeted violence." "Yes." "Do you believe you were the target?" Silence. "Yes," I said finally. He studied me carefully. "Then you're in danger."
I didn't need him to tell me that.
By the time I returned to my apartment building under temporary police escort, it was almost dawn. The Chicago skyline was pale gray against the rising sun. When I stepped out of the elevator, someone was standing in the hallway. Mark Delgado. "You okay?" he asked. "Ethan's dead."
His jaw tightened.
"Damn. Did you hear so fast? It's already circulating internally. Board members are panicking." Of course they were. Blood spreads faster than news. Inside my apartment, I dropped my coat on the chair. "This isn't just construction fraud," I said. "It's political money laundering." Mark went quiet.
"You knew," I said.
"Not everything." "What did you know?" 3 months ago, I got an anonymous email. It said Hawthorne Infrastructure was a front. For what? Campaign financing. The room felt colder. "Did you tell my father?" "Yes." "Did you tell Victoria?" He didn't answer. That silence felt louder than any confession. "Who has executive-level clearance on wire transfers?" I asked. "Victoria. Your father. CFO Leonard Grayson. And me." "And where is Leonard now?" "Officially? Switzerland. Unofficially. Haven't heard from him in a week." Another missing piece. Another shadow. The next morning, headlines exploded across Chicago. Whitmore redevelopment project linked to federal probe. Whistleblower shot dead. My name wasn't mentioned, but internally everyone knew. An emergency virtual board meeting was called. Victoria appeared on the large conference screen from New York. Impeccable as always. This tragedy is unfortunate, she began smoothly, but we must remain focused. Unfortunate, I said. He was murdered. Allegedly. Don't do that. Other board members shifted uncomfortably. Leonard Grayson was absent. I want a full internal audit of Hawthorne infrastructure, I said. That would invite unnecessary scrutiny, Victoria replied. We're already under federal investigation. If investors panic, the company collapses. Or, I said quietly, maybe collapse is what someone wants. Silence. Victoria's eyes sharpened. You're emotional, Sarah.
No.
I'm done being blind. Then I said it. I want access to my father's private encrypted files. A flicker crossed her face. Those are sealed, not according to the will's executive clause. Technically, she couldn't deny it. After a long pause.
Fine, she said.
But her smile didn't reach her eyes. 2 hours later, I stood in the Chicago branch's secure server room. Biometric scanner. Access granted. A folder appeared on screen. Daniel Whitmore, private archive. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Inside were financial reports, internal memos, and one video file. If anything happens to me, my hands shook as I pressed play. My father appeared on screen. He looked tired, but determined. Sarah, he said directly into the camera, if you're watching this, it means things escalated. My throat tightened. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. He took a breath. Leonard Grayson has been moving funds through Hawthorne. Leonard, not Victoria. But he isn't acting alone, my father continued. Someone on the board approved secondary clearances. The video flickered briefly. Be careful who you trust. The threat is closer than you think. The file ended abruptly. That was it. Leonard was primary. But someone else helped him. Victoria?
Mark?
Or someone I hadn't even considered. The server room door clicked open behind me. I turned. Mark stood there. You okay? His face looked concerned. Or guilty. Mark, I said carefully. Who is secondary clearance authorization? Depends on transaction thresholds. Did you ever approve Hawthorne transfers? A beat. Some automated payments were pre-cleared. That's not what I asked.
His jaw tightened.
You think I'm involved? I didn't answer. Silence can be louder than accusation. You don't understand what's happening, he said. Then explain it to me. But he didn't get the chance. A deafening explosion shook the entire building. The floor vibrated violently. Alarms screamed overhead. Lights flickered. What was that? I shouted. Construction site, Mark said, already moving. We rushed to the window. Across the district, black smoke billowed from the South Halstead project site. One section of the concrete structure had partially collapsed. Fire crews were already racing toward it. My stomach dropped. The destroyed section housed the temporary container that stored physical backup financial records, paper copies, original signatures, evidence.
Gone.
This wasn't an accident. It was a purge. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. They're accelerating the plan. My fingers moved quickly.
Who are you?
The reply came instantly. Someone your father trusted more than anyone. A chill ran down my spine. And someone who betrayed him. My breath caught. Another message appeared. Meet me tomorrow. Same time. If you want the truth. I stared at the burning structure in the distance. The game had changed. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about survival. And now I had a terrifying new question. Was the real enemy Leonard? Victoria? Mark? Or the anonymous texter guiding me deeper into the fire? Because Whoever it was, they weren't just watching. They were controlling the board. The smoke from the explosion lingered over South Halstead like a dark omen. Even the next morning, the air in Chicago smelled faintly of burnt concrete and melted steel. News helicopters hovered overhead. Reporters gathered outside the damaged perimeter fencing. Federal investigators were now visibly present. They weren't being quiet anymore. Neither were the investors. My phone had 27 missed calls. Board members, reporters, unknown numbers, and one message from the anonymous texter. Tonight, 8 p.m., Grant Park, by the fountain.
Come alone.
I didn't tell anyone. Not Mark. Not Robert. Not the police. If this person truly knew what my father was investigating, I needed answers before someone else erased them. The day was chaos. Federal agents walked through the Chicago office with warrants. They seized computers, questioned staff, requested internal financial access logs. Victoria called me around noon. "I hope you're cooperating," she said coolly. "With law enforcement?" "Yes." "With me," she corrected. "That depends. Were you aware Leonard was moving money through Hawthorne?" A pause. "I suspected irregularities." "Did you authorize secondary clearances?" "Careful, Sarah. That's not an answer." Her voice lowered. "If you continue accusing board members without proof, you'll destroy what little stability remains." "Stability?" I said. "Two people are dead." Silence. "Yes," she said finally. "And you should ask yourself who benefits from that." Before I could respond, she hung up. Who benefits? That question echoed. If Leonard was primary, if someone else authorized clearances, if Ethan was silenced, if the physical evidence was destroyed, then someone wasn't just protecting money. They were protecting power. 8:02 p.m., Grant Park. Chicago's skyline towered behind Buckingham Fountain, water illuminated in soft white light. The wind was lighter tonight, but the tension in my chest was heavier. Joggers passed occasionally. Couples walked their dogs. The city seemed normal. Too normal. Right on time, a familiar voice said behind me. I turned, and my blood ran cold. Robert Klein, my father's estate attorney. He stood there in a dark overcoat, hands in pockets, face calm as ever. "You?" I whispered. He nodded once. "You've been texting me." "Yes." "You said you betrayed my father." "I did." The world felt like it tilted slightly. "Explain." He exhaled slowly. "Daniel came to me 6 months ago. He suspected internal fraud. He believed Leonard Grayson was laundering money through Hawthorne." I saw the video. Robert's expression tightened. "Then you know Leonard wasn't alone." "Who was helping him?" He held my gaze. "Victoria." My pulse pounded in my ears. "You're sure?" "I handled clearance authorizations personally." Victoria approved multiple secondary overrides under the guise of emergency funding. My chest tightened. Why didn't my father confront her publicly? He was gathering irrefutable evidence. He didn't want a corporate scandal. He wanted criminal convictions. "And you betrayed him how?" Robert looked away briefly. "I warned Victoria." The words felt like a physical blow. "Why?" "She told me Leonard was being set up, that Daniel was paranoid, that federal investigators would misinterpret normal political lobbying." "And you believed her?" "I hesitated," he admitted. "And in that hesitation, she moved funds, erased trails. And then my father died." Robert nodded slowly. "I started digging after his death. That's when I realized Daniel was right." "And Ethan?" "I connected him with Daniel initially." Anger surged through me. "You put him in this." "I did. And now he's dead." Robert's voice lowered. "Yes." We stood there in silence, city lights reflecting in the fountain water. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "Partial. Not enough to survive court." "Survive?" You think this is just legal exposure? Robert said sharply. This involves federal political donors. Powerful ones. Leonard didn't act independently. Victoria didn't either. My mind raced. Who's above them? That's what Daniel was close to exposing. A cold realization crept in. Is Leonard even in Switzerland? Robert shook his head slightly.
No.
Where is he? Missing. The word hit harder than expected. Missing how? Phone disconnected. Financial accounts frozen. No confirmed sightings. So, either he's running, or he's already been silenced, Robert finished. A chill spread down my spine. And Victoria? She's positioning herself as uninformed, cooperative, stable. She flew to Chicago the night Ethan was shot. Robert's eyes sharpened. She what? She was at Navy Pier. Watching. That changed something in his expression. Then she's not as confident as she appears. My phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. I froze. Robert noticed. Show me. I turned the screen toward him. You shouldn't trust him either. Robert went pale. That's not me, he said immediately. Another message appeared. He warned her once. He'll do it again. I looked up slowly. Did you tell Victoria you were meeting me tonight?
No.
Did anyone know?
No.
Another buzz. Look behind you.
My heart slammed.
I turned instantly. Across the park, near the tree line. A black SUV. Engine running. Lights off. Watching. Robert stepped closer to me. We need to leave. Before we could move, the SUV doors opened. Two men stepped out. Same build. Same posture. As the men at Navy Pier. My blood ran cold. They're not here to talk, Robert muttered. The men began walking toward us.
Come.
Deliberate. Robert grabbed my arm. Run. We sprinted across the park lawn. Footsteps thundered behind us. I heard one of them shout, "Stop." A gunshot cracked through the night. Water in the fountain splashed as a bullet ricocheted. People screamed. I ran harder than I ever had in my life. Robert pulled me toward a side street. Another shot rang out. Robert stumbled slightly, but kept moving. We ducked behind a concrete service wall, breathing hard. They're escalating, he said. No, I whispered. They're eliminating. Sirens began echoing in the distance again. The SUV engine roared. Tires screeched. Then silence. I turned to Robert and saw something dark spreading across his coat. Robert. He looked down.
Blood.
He had been hit. Damn, he muttered under his breath. No, no, no. He grabbed my wrist tightly. Listen to me. Stay still, ambulance. Listen. His grip tightened despite the blood. There's a safety deposit box. What? Fifth Third Bank, downtown Chicago. My heart raced. Under Daniel's name. What's in it? Everything. His breathing grew heavier. Account numbers. Political names. Signed approvals. Robert. He looked directly into my eyes. Victoria didn't act alone. I know. You're not fighting a person, Sarah. Then what am I fighting? He swallowed hard. A machine. Sirens grew louder. His grip loosened. You're stronger than he ever was, Robert whispered. Then his hand fell, and his eyes went still. I knelt there in the cold Chicago night. Sirens approaching. Another ally gone. Another truth buried in blood. But this time, I had a location. A safety deposit box. And proof that this wasn't just corporate greed. It was systemic corruption. Political. Organized.
Deadly.
Across the dark park lawn, something glinted under a street lamp. A phone. One of the attackers must have dropped it during the chase. I stood slowly. Police sirens were seconds away. I walked toward it. Picked it up. The screen was cracked. Unlocked. And on the home screen, a recent outgoing message. To a contact saved as
V.
My heart stopped. The last sent text read, "It's handled." I looked toward the skyline. Victoria Whitmore wasn't panicking. She wasn't reacting. She was directing.
And now,
I had something she didn't know about. Her connection. Her link. Her vulnerability. The war wasn't over. It had just become personal. Chicago woke up to another headline soaked in blood. Estate attorney shot in Grant Park, linked to Whitmore probe. By 7 a.m., every major financial news outlet had picked up the story. The Whitmore stock price dipped 11% at market open, and Victoria Whitmore went live on CNBC. I watched the interview from my apartment, hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. She looked flawless.
calm.
Controlled. "This is a tragic coincidence," she said smoothly. "Whitmore Developments is cooperating fully with federal authorities. We are victims of circumstance." Victims. I almost laughed. The anchor asked, "Is there internal corruption within your board?" Victoria didn't blink. "Absolutely not." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not the anonymous texter. A new one. Mark Delgado. "We need to talk."
Now.
20 minutes later, Mark was in my apartment, pacing. Stocks crashing. Investors are spooked. Feds are escalating. "Good," I said. He stopped pacing. "Good."
Yes.
Pressure makes people sloppy. He studied me. "You've changed." "No," I said quietly. "I've stopped pretending." I placed the cracked burner phone, the one I recovered from Grant Park, on the table between us. Mark's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "Dropped by one of the shooters." He froze. "There's a contact saved as V."
Silence.
"Last message." I continued. "It's handled. Sent 10 minutes after Robert was shot." Mark exhaled slowly. "You're sure it's connected?" "Yes." "Could be coincidence." I stared at him. 2 shootings. 2 dead men. Both linked to Daniel's investigation. Same type of SUV. Same structure. Same timing. Mark didn't argue. "Police know?" he asked. "Not yet." "You should turn it in." "I will. But not before I open the safety deposit box." His expression shifted. "What safety deposit box?" "Daniel left one. Robert told me before he died." Mark stepped back slightly. "Sarah, if what Robert said is true, this goes beyond Victoria." "I know. You're stepping into federal-level political corruption." "I know. And you're doing it without protection." I met his eyes. "You still haven't answered my question." "What question?" "Did you ever approve secondary clearances for Hawthorne?" He looked exhausted. "Yes." The word landed heavy. But, he added quickly, "not knowingly for fraud." "Victoria told me Daniel had authorized emergency liquidity transfers." "And you believed her?"
She's the chairwoman, he snapped.
"You don't casually accuse the chair of laundering money. But you suspected something." "Yes." "Why didn't you go to the feds?" He looked at me like I'd just asked a child's question. "Because people who go to the feds in cases like this don't retire peacefully." The room went quiet. He wasn't wrong. By noon, I was walking into Fifth Third Bank in downtown Chicago. High ceilings. Polished floors. Controlled silence. "I need access to a safety deposit box under Daniel Whitmore's name," I told the manager. She typed.
Paused.
"Yes, Miss Whitmore. You're listed as conditional beneficiary." Of course I was. My father always planned 5 steps ahead. Inside the vault room, the air felt colder. The manager placed the small metal box on a private table. "Take your time." When she left, I stared at it. This box might hold answers. Or a death sentence. I unlocked it. Inside, a thick envelope, a flash drive, and a folded handwritten letter. I opened the letter first. It was my father's handwriting. "Sarah, if you're reading this, then I failed to stop them quietly. Trust very few people. Leonard is greedy. Victoria is ambitious. But neither is the architect. My pulse quickened. The real power sits outside the company. Political donors, federal contracts, development zoning approvals. This machine feeds itself. If you expose it, you will become a target. If you walk away, you will live. I don't know which choice makes me a better father. My vision blurred. He knew. He knew this would reach me. I opened the envelope. Printed documents. Transaction records. Signed secondary approvals. Victoria Whitmore's digital authorization stamps. Leonard Grayson's transfer logs. And something else. A list of political action committees. Large donations tied to Hawthorne Shell accounts. Names circled in red ink. 2 U.S. senators. 1 Illinois congressman. And a powerful real estate regulatory commissioner. This wasn't corruption. This was infrastructure-level rot. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Encrypted files opened with a password prompt. At the bottom of the letter, my father had written one final line. Password. You were always stronger. My throat tightened. I typed. Stronger. Access granted. Folders opened. Video recordings. Private meetings. Audio clips. One video file caught my attention. Meeting, November 14th. I clicked it. The footage showed a private dining room in Manhattan. Daniel, Leonard, and
Victoria.
They were arguing. You're moving money too fast, my father said in the recording. Leonard looked nervous. Victoria leaned forward calmly. You wanted political leverage, she said. This is how leverage works. This is illegal, my father snapped. It's strategic, Victoria replied coolly. The video ended abruptly. My hands were shaking. She knew. She wasn't manipulated. She was orchestrating. As I exited the bank, the city felt different. Heavier. More dangerous. My phone rang. Victoria. I answered. You went to the bank, she said without greeting. My blood ran cold. How do you know that? Because I have access to estate movement notifications.
Of course she did.
Did you find what we were looking for? She asked calmly. You tell me. A pause. Sarah, you're intelligent. You must understand the scale of this. Oh, I do. Then you understand you can't win. I stopped walking. Traffic noise roared around me. Maybe I don't need to win, I said quietly. Excuse me? Maybe I just need to expose you. Her tone sharpened. You think you're protecting your father's legacy, but you're about to destroy it. He was trying to stop you. No, she said softly. He was trying to control me. The admission was subtle, but it was there. You loved the power, I said. I built that company with him. You corrupted it. I evolved it. There it was. No denial. No apology. Just ideology. You don't scare me anymore, I said. You should be afraid, she replied. The call ended. That evening, as I reviewed the files again, something didn't add up. The transfers stopped 3 days before my father died. Not after.
Before.
Which meant he confronted them. And then
he died.
My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Not Robert. Not Mark. A new message. You're closer than Daniel ever was. Another message. But you're missing the final piece. My pulse spiked. Who is this? The reply came. Ask yourself why Victoria was at Navy Pier before the shooting started. My breathing slowed. She wasn't reacting.
She was supervising.
Another message appeared. She wasn't there to watch you. She was there to make sure Leonard didn't talk. My heart stopped. Leonard. Missing CFO. If he had shown up that night, then the shooters weren't just after Ethan. They were cleaning the board, which meant Leonard might still be alive.
Or
he was already dead. A final message came through. Check the abandoned warehouse on 47th Street.
I stared at the address.
Industrial zone.
South Side. Dark.
Isolated. Exactly where you disappear someone. I grabbed my coat. This was reckless. Dangerous. Possibly suicidal. But if Leonard was alive, he was the last living link. And if he was dead, then I would finally understand the full scale of what Victoria was willing to do. As I stepped out of my apartment building into the cold Chicago night, a black SUV sat across the street. Engine idling, lights off, waiting. And this time, the driver stepped out slowly.
Tall.
Familiar build. But when he stepped under the streetlight, my breath caught. It wasn't one of the shooters. It wasn't a stranger. It was Leonard Grayson.
Alive.
And looking directly at me. The Chicago wind cut between us as Leonard Grayson stepped fully into the streetlight.
Alive.
Not hiding in Switzerland. Not dead. Standing 20 feet away from me. He looked thinner than I remembered from board meetings. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by a dark wool coat and exhaustion carved into his face. The black SUV behind him idled quietly. "You shouldn't be out alone," Leonard said calmly. My pulse pounded, but I didn't step back. "You're supposed to be in Switzerland." "I was supposed to be dead," he replied. Silence stretched between us. "Did you send the shooters?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "If I wanted you dead, Sarah, we wouldn't be having this conversation." That wasn't comforting. "You were at Navy Pier," I said. "Or someone connected to you was." "No," he said immediately. "That wasn't me." I studied his face.
Fear.
Real fear. "Then who?" He glanced up and down the street. "Not here." I didn't move. "You have 30 seconds before I call the police." He gave a dry laugh. "If you call the police, you'll be escorted into federal custody by morning." That made my stomach drop. For what? For being listed as conditional controlling shareholder of a company under federal political corruption investigation.
Cold. Calculated.
True. You think I'm a suspect? I think you're leverage. The SUV engine shut off. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Victoria thinks you're emotional. Impulsive. She believes she can outmaneuver you. And you. I think you're the only one she didn't calculate correctly." I crossed my arms. "You authorized transfers through Hawthorne." "Yes." "You laundered political money." "Yes." The blunt honesty caught me off guard. "But I wasn't the architect," he continued. "I was the banker." "Meaning?" "I moved money where I was told." "By Victoria?" He shook his head slowly.
No.
That answer hit differently. "Then who?" Leonard looked directly at me. "Your father." The world seemed to go silent. "That's a lie." "It isn't. He recorded a video naming you." "Yes," Leonard said. "Because by the time he recorded that video, he realized he'd lost control." My breathing grew shallow. "You're saying my father started the laundering?" "I'm saying he approved the political leverage strategy 2 years ago. Victoria expanded it. I operationalized it."
No.
He believed it would protect Whitmore developments from hostile zoning restrictions and federal contract freezes. That's not who he was. Leonard's expression hardened. That's exactly who he was. The words cut deep. My mind raced. The November 14th video. "You wanted political leverage. This is how leverage works." Victoria's voice. Daniel's anger. Had he created something he couldn't contain? "He tried to stop it," I said quietly. "Yes," Leonard replied, "when the scale grew beyond what he intended. And then he died." Leonard exhaled. "Yes." "You poisoned him."
No.
"You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to look at motive." I froze. "If I kill Daniel," Leonard continued, "I become the obvious suspect. CFO with full transaction access. Missing after his death. Then who benefits?" He didn't answer. But he didn't have to. "Victoria, where have you been?" I asked. "Hiding." "From who?" "From the same machine that killed Ethan and Robert." My heart skipped. "You think Victoria ordered those hits?" "I think she approved them." "And who executes?" Leonard looked toward the skyline. People far above this company. We moved into the SUV. I didn't fully trust him, but I needed answers. As he drove south toward the industrial district, Chicago's bright downtown lights gave way to darker streets. Warehouses, rail yards, abandoned factories. 47th Street Warehouse, I said. You know it. Yes. Is someone there? Yes. My chest tightened. Who? The real architect. My breath caught. We pulled into a quiet industrial lot. A massive brick warehouse stood ahead, windows broken, interior dark. No visible guards. No visible movement. That's too easy, I whispered. It's not unguarded, Leonard said. It's monitored. For what? For conversations like this. He stepped out of the SUV. I followed. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous. Dust floated in beams of moonlight through broken ceiling panels. In the center of the space, a folding table, one chair, and a man sitting calmly. Mid-60s. Silver hair. Expensive overcoat despite the dust. I recognized him instantly. Senator Harold Whitaker. One of the names circled in red in my father's file. He looked up slowly. Sarah Whitmore, he said smoothly. You look like your father. My blood ran cold. You funded illegal campaign contributions through my father's company. He smiled faintly, careful with language. You used Hawthorne as a shell. He stood slowly. Your father approached me first. The words felt like a blade. That's a lie. No, Whitaker said calmly. Daniel wanted zoning immunity for 3 federal redevelopment projects. I made introductions. Leonard structured the pipeline. Victoria optimized it. Leonard remained silent beside me. You corrupted him, I said. He was already ambitious, Whitaker replied. Ambition just needs opportunity. And when he tried to stop? Whitaker's smile faded slightly. He became a liability. My heart pounded violently. You killed him. Whitaker tilted his head. Technically?
No.
Ice filled my veins. Digoxin, he continued. Very subtle in low doses. Hard to trace. My fists clenched. You're admitting this? He chuckled. I'm explaining inevitability. And Ethan? Robert. Collateral containment. Rage flooded my body. You think you're untouchable. I am, he replied calmly. Because the system protects itself. He stepped closer. You, however, are emotional. And exposed. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket. I have everything. Whitaker smiled wider. No, he said gently. You have pieces. He glanced upward slightly. I heard it then. A faint mechanical hum. Cameras. Recording. Leonard tensed. Whitaker's tone shifted. If you release partial information, it looks like corporate fraud. Leonard goes to prison. Victoria takes the fall. And you? I demanded. I remain a respected public servant. The manipulation was surgical. You can't prove I ordered anything, Whitaker continued, because I never touched the transactions. My father's words echoed in my mind. You're not fighting a person. You're fighting a machine. Whitaker stepped even closer. But here's the thing, Sarah, he said softly. You're different from Daniel.
How?
You don't crave power. Silence. You crave justice. My breathing slowed. And that makes you predictable. Leonard suddenly spoke. She recorded the meeting. Whitaker's smile didn't change. Yes, he said calmly. Of course she did. My pulse stopped. She? I whispered. Whitaker nodded slightly. Victoria is listening. A small earpiece glinted behind his collar. She wanted to hear how far you'd go, he said. Rage and betrayal collided inside me. She set this up. Yes. And you agreed. I always agree, Whitaker said. With whoever benefits the system. Suddenly, police sirens wailed outside the warehouse. Whitaker didn't flinch. Leonard's eyes widened. This wasn't me, he muttered. Whitaker smiled faintly. Victoria is cleaning the board. My heart dropped. Cleaning. Leonard is the final loose end. Police lights flashed through broken windows. Armed officers stormed inside. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Leonard froze. Whitaker calmly raised his hands. And then I realized I was the only one not being pointed at with guns. The agents surrounded Leonard immediately. Leonard Grayson, you are under arrest for financial crimes, money laundering, and conspiracy. He looked at me in shock. This wasn't the plan. Whitaker met my eyes one last time. See, he said quietly. The machine protects itself. As Leonard was dragged away, shouting, Whitaker walked calmly toward the agents. Senator Whitaker, one agent said respectfully. We didn't realize you were present. Just observing, he replied smoothly. Observing? The narrative was already shifting. Leonard would take the fall. Victoria would remain chair. Whitaker untouched. And I was standing in the middle of a system designed to crush truth. As agents escorted everyone out, my phone buzzed in my pocket.
Victoria.
One text. Now do you understand why you can't win? I stared at the flashing police lights. At Leonard being forced into a car. At Whitaker shaking hands calmly. The machine wasn't broken. It was functioning perfectly. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if exposing it would save anyone, or just get me killed next. The warehouse lights faded behind me as federal vehicles pulled away. Leonard was inside one of them, shouting, protesting, promising to talk. But no one listens to a CFO when a U.S. senator is calmly shaking hands with agents outside. The machine had chosen its sacrifice. And it wasn't Victoria. It wasn't Whitaker. It was Leonard. I stood there in the cold South Side air, heart pounding, watching power rewrite reality in real time. My phone buzzed again. Victoria. Come home, Sarah. This ends if you let it. Home. Manhattan penthouse. Glass walls and polished lies. I typed back. You poisoned him. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, careful what you accuse, without proof. I stared at the screen. Proof. Whitaker had admitted it, but only verbally, and likely recorded in a way that protected him. This wasn't about truth. It was about admissible evidence. Back at my apartment, I replayed everything. The safety deposit files. The November 14th video. Whitaker's partial confession. Leonard's arrest. Victoria listening live.
She hadn't panicked.
She'd orchestrated. Leonard removed. Evidence burned. Narrative redirected. And I was still alive. Which meant I was still useful. That realization chilled me. She didn't want me dead. Not yet. She wanted control. I opened my father's flash drive again. Scrolling deeper this time. Buried inside a folder labeled Personal was a second video file. Smaller. Time-stamped 2 days before his death. I clicked it. The camera was angled differently this time. Not staged. Almost hidden. My father looked exhausted. I underestimated her, he said quietly. Her. I thought ambition would stop at strategy. It didn't. He ran a hand over his face. If anything happens to me, it won't be Leonard's decision. My breath caught. I loved Victoria, he continued, but she doesn't believe in limits. He looked directly at the camera. She believes in outcomes. The video ended. I leaned back slowly. Victoria hadn't been manipulated. She had evolved the system beyond my father's control. But there was still something bothering me. Why meet at the warehouse? Why allow Whitaker to speak? Why sacrifice Leonard publicly? Unless this was phase 1. I picked up the burner phone again, the one from the shooter. Still powered off. I turned it on. Battery 12%. I opened the messages. Most threads were deleted. Except one. An unsent draft.
Addressed to V.
The draft read, "She knows about the deposit box." My blood went cold. I had never told anyone about the box. Except,
Mark.
the room felt suddenly smaller. I replayed the memory. In my apartment. After the Grant Park shooting. I'm going to the bank. He had been there. He had known. And hours later, Victoria called me about it. Not asking. Stating. Because she already knew. My phone buzzed again. Mark. We need to strategize. The board is demanding emergency restructuring. I stared at the screen.
Was he scared?
Or managing. I typed back. Come over. 30 minutes later, he arrived. He looked exhausted, but steady. They're framing Leonard as sole operator, he said immediately. Victoria is positioning as cooperative witness. I know. She'll survive this. Will she? He paused. What do you mean? I slid the burner phone across the table.
He looked at it.
What's this? From one of the shooters. His expression didn't change. There's a draft message saved. I continued. To Victoria. Silence. His jaw tightened slightly. You think I leaked the deposit box? I think someone did. He ran a hand through his hair. Sarah, don't lie to me. He stared at the floor for a moment, then looked up. I warned her. The words landed heavy. Why? I whispered. Because if you open that box without leverage, you'd be dead. My heart pounded. You don't get to decide that. I was trying to buy time. By telling the woman who poisoned my father? I didn't know she'd escalate. You knew exactly who she was. He stepped closer. You think this is black and white? Your father built the machine. Victoria optimized it. Whitaker weaponized it. Leonard ran it. And you. I maintained it. Silence. The truth sat between us like a loaded weapon. Why help me at all? I asked. His voice softened. Because Daniel trusted you more than anyone. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. My chest tightened. Did you know about the digoxin? His eyes widened slightly.
No.
I watched him carefully. He looked genuinely shaken. Victoria handled Daniel's personal life, he said quietly. Medical appointments. Private schedules. Of course she did. Access. Opportunity. Motive. The full triangle. Mark exhaled. She's planning something bigger. What? She called an emergency shareholder summit. New York. 2 days from now. My pulse quickened. For what? Leadership vote. The room went silent. She's consolidating power, I said. Yes. She's going to eliminate the conditional clause. Mark nodded. If she secures majority before your year condition matures, your controlling interest becomes symbolic. It clicked instantly. Chicago wasn't just a test. It was a timer. She needed to survive long enough to neutralize my inheritance. Can we stop the vote? I asked. Only if you trigger the federal evidence publicly. And if I do, you burn everything. The company, the board, Whitaker's allies, possibly markets. And you? I asked. I go down with it. I studied him. Why are you still here? He met my eyes. Because I'm tired of maintaining rot. The air between us shifted. This wasn't simple loyalty. This was guilt. And maybe redemption.
My phone buzzed again.
Victoria. One message. If you attend the summit, you won't leave the same. I smiled faintly. She loved dramatic warnings. I typed back. Good. Mark looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I stood. Fly to New York. And stop playing defense. Outside my window, Chicago traffic moved like veins of light through darkness. Victoria thought she controlled the board. Whitaker thought he controlled the system. But they both underestimated one thing. I wasn't my father. I didn't want leverage. I wanted exposure. And exposure doesn't negotiate. As I packed my bag for New York, my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. Not Mark. Not Victoria. A new message. If you release the files, Senator Whitaker won't be the only one indicted. My heartbeat slowed. Another message followed. Your father's name is all over the Origin transactions. My hands froze. That was the final trap. If I exposed the machine, I destroyed my father's legacy. If I stayed silent, I let his murderer win. And suddenly, the real war wasn't corporate. It was personal. 2 days. One shareholder summit. One decision. Clear his name. Or burn it down. Manhattan looked exactly the same. Cold glass towers. Yellow taxis weaving through traffic. Steam rising from subway grates. Wall Street suits walking fast like the world depended on their next phone call. Nothing about the city suggested that empires were rotting underneath. I stood across from Whitmore Development's headquarters on Madison Avenue. 47 floors of steel and legacy. My father's name etched into the lobby wall. And today it would either be redeemed or destroyed. The shareholders' summit. The conference hall on the 38th floor was filled with investors, board members, attorneys, and financial media. Controlled chaos. Whispers everywhere. Victoria stood at the front near the massive LED screen, poised, elegant, lethal. She wore white, not black, not mourning.
Power.
When she saw me enter, her expression didn't shift, but her eyes did. You came, she said smoothly. I always finish what I start. She smiled faintly. We'll see. The meeting began. Our company has faced unfortunate instability, Victoria addressed the room. However, with decisive leadership, Whitmore Developments will emerge stronger. Slides appeared behind her. Graphs stabilizing. Narrative reframed. Leonard officially labeled as rogue executive acting independently. Textbook damage control. Then she said it. In light of recent events, I propose a leadership restructuring. To protect investor confidence, we must consolidate executive authority immediately. There it was. The move. If passed, her control would become untouchable before my 1-year clause matured. The vote would erase me. My heart pounded. Mark sat 3 seats down from me. Silent. Watching. Waiting. Victoria continued. This board must act responsibly. Emotional reactions do not build companies. Strategic vision does. Her eyes flicked toward me when she said emotional. The floor opened for discussion. I stood. The room quieted. My father built this company on ambition. I began. But ambition without limits becomes corruption. Murmurs. Victoria's jaw tightened slightly. Leonard Grayson was not acting alone. I continued. And this board knows that. Victoria's tone sharpened. If you have evidence, present it. Otherwise, refrain from slander. I took a breath. This was it. Expose the machine. And burn my father with it. Or stay silent. Let her win. I plugged the flash drive into the presentation system. Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria didn't move. The November 14th video appeared on screen. Daniel. Leonard. Victoria. You're moving money too fast, my father's recorded voice echoed. This is how leverage works, Victoria replied in the video. The room went dead silent. The clip ended. Victoria didn't flinch. That video lacks context, she said calmly. I clicked another file. Transaction logs. Her authorization stamps.
Dates. Amounts.
PAC connections. Political ties. Investors shifted uncomfortably. Phones began buzzing. Reporters whispering. Victoria finally stepped forward. You're destroying your father's legacy, she said quietly enough that only I could hear. I looked at her. He tried to stop you. And failed. That was the first crack. Public. Subtle. But real. Then I did something she didn't expect. I paused the presentation. And opened the second video. The one recorded 2 days before his death. I underestimated her. My father's tired voice filled the room. She believes in outcomes. Eyes shifted toward Victoria. Her composure tightened. If anything happens to me, Daniel continued in the video, it won't be Leonard's decision. A collective inhale. Victoria stepped toward the screen. This is emotional manipulation. I cut her off. No, I said clearly. It's context. Silence swallowed the room. Investors looked uncertain. Board members sweating. Victoria's authority slipping. But I wasn't done. I looked directly at the press seated in the back. My father approved initial political leverage strategies. That's true. Murmurs intensified. Victoria blinked. She hadn't expected that. But when he realized the scale of corruption, he tried to shut it down. And he was poisoned. The room erupted. Shouting. Phones out. Security shifting. Victoria's mask cracked for the first time. Careful, she warned. No, I said firmly. I'm done being careful. Federal agents suddenly entered the conference hall. Conversations stopped instantly. The lead agent spoke clearly. Victoria Whitmore, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of financial conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and suspicion of involvement in a homicide investigation.
Shock. Pure shock.
Victoria slowly turned toward them. This is absurd. The agent continued. We've received new corroborating digital evidence linking your personal device to encrypted communications, directing witness interference. Her eyes snapped toward me. I held her gaze. The burner phone. The recovered draft. Anonymous transfers. I hadn't released everything publicly. I had sent a secured evidence package directly to federal prosecutors an hour before the meeting. Strategic. Not emotional. She miscalculated. You think this protects him? She hissed at me quietly as agents approached. I'm not protecting him, I said. I'm telling the truth. They placed her in handcuffs. Cameras flashed. Board members stepped back. Investors stared in disbelief. As she was led away, she leaned toward me one last time. You still don't understand the machine. Maybe I didn't. But she was no longer controlling it. Aftermath. By evening, every major news network was covering the story. Whitmore Development stock was temporarily halted. Senator Whitaker announced an internal ethics review. Carefully worded. Predictable. But cracks were forming. Leonard was negotiating cooperation. Mark testified before federal investigators. And me? I stood alone in my father's empty Manhattan penthouse. The skyline glowing beyond the glass. The empire quiet. The war not entirely over. I picked up my phone. One final message from an unknown number. You chose exposure. Another message followed. Now watch who else falls. I stared at the screen. Whitaker hadn't been arrested. Not yet. The machine was damaged. Not dismantled. And I had just declared war publicly. But something inside me felt different. Lighter. Not because I won, but because I didn't compromise. My father's name would be scrutinized, debated, questioned, but the full truth was out. Ambition, corruption, regret, betrayal, all of it. I walked toward the window. New York lights stretched endlessly. And, for the first time since his funeral, I felt like I belonged here. Not as an heir, not as a victim, but as someone who chose integrity over power. Behind me, the television anchor said something that made me pause. Federal investigators confirmed they are expanding the probe to include several high-ranking political figures. I closed my eyes. The machine was shaking. Not destroyed, but shaking. And somewhere in Washington, Senator Whitaker was watching the same news, calculating his next move. The war wasn't finished, but Victoria was gone. The board fractured, the empire exposed, and I had survived long enough to see the truth surface. But survival wasn't victory. Not yet, because if Whitaker still stood, the machine still breathed, and I had one final move left. The rain returned the night before the Senate hearing. New York rain. Cold. Steady. Relentless. It traced lines down the glass walls of the Manhattan penthouse as I stood barefoot in the dark, staring at a skyline my father helped build and almost destroyed. Victoria was in federal custody. Leonard had agreed to cooperate. Mark had submitted sworn testimony. Whitmore Development's board had voted to freeze all political contributions pending investigation. The machine was cracking, but it wasn't dead. Senator Harold Whitaker was still standing, still smiling on television, still calling it an unfortunate corporate deviation. And tomorrow, he would testify before a federal ethics committee. If he walked out clean, this entire war would be rewritten as a rogue corporate scandal. My father would be remembered as the architect of corruption, Victoria as a reckless executive, Leonard as a greedy banker, and Whitaker, untouched. That wasn't justice. That was containment. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., I called Robert Klein's former associate, the only person he trusted inside the federal prosecutor's office. Assistant U.S. Attorney Claire Donahue. She had reviewed the files I sent before the shareholder summit. "You have something else," she said without greeting. "Yes." "Make it worth the risk." "It is." I sent her the final file, the one I had held back, the one Whitaker never knew existed, because my father hadn't stored it in the safety deposit box. He had hidden it somewhere else, somewhere personal. 3 days earlier, after the summit, I went through my father's private study in the penthouse. Most people would search safes, hidden compartments, digital backups. But my father wasn't sentimental about money.
He was sentimental about me.
When I was 10 years old, he gave me a snow globe from Chicago, Navy Pier's Ferris wheel inside it. He said, "Every empire starts with a view." It still sat on his bookshelf, untouched, unmoved. When I shook it absently 2 nights ago, something inside rattled differently. Not water, not glass. I broke it open. Inside the hollow base, a micro SD card. Encrypted. Password protected. The password? My childhood nickname. Access granted. It wasn't financial data. It wasn't transaction logs. It was audio. Recorded conversations. Private dinners. Political strategy sessions. And one conversation in particular. Daniel Whitmore. Harold Whitaker. Victoria. The recording was crystal clear. Whitaker's voice. "If Daniel pulls funding, we neutralize him." Victoria's voice. Calm, controlled. "He won't pull funding if he thinks the investigation targets Leonard." Whitaker. "And if he doesn't cooperate?" A pause. Then Whitaker again. "Then we accelerate his medical condition." No ambiguity. No metaphor. No interpretation. Intent. Conspiracy. Premeditation. And Victoria's voice again. "I'll handle access." That recording didn't just implicate Victoria. It destroyed Whitaker. Washington, D.C. felt different from New York. Colder in a political way. Marble buildings. American flags. Camera crews. Power dressed in Navy suits. I sat in the back row as Senator Whitaker adjusted his tie and took his seat at the witness table.
Calm.
Confident, he began speaking. "These allegations stem from internal corporate misconduct. I have always acted within legal boundaries." The doors opened. Assistant U.S. Attorney Claire Donahue entered with 2 federal marshals. Whispers spread instantly. She handed documents to the committee chair. And then, she pressed play. The audio echoed through the chamber. "If Daniel pulls funding, we neutralize him." Whitaker's face drained of color. Victoria's calm voice followed. "He won't pull funding if he thinks the investigation targets Leonard." Gasps filled the room. Cameras zoomed in. Whitaker stood abruptly. "This is fabricated." Then his own final words played. "Then we accelerate his medical condition." Silence.
Pure. Stunning.
Silence. Claire Donahue spoke clearly. "This recording has been verified for authenticity. We are formally charging Senator Harold Whitaker with conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and federal corruption. Marshals stepped forward. Whitaker's composure shattered. "You think this changes anything?" he spat, not at the committee. At me. Because he had seen me in the back row. "You exposed the machine," he said quietly as they cuffed him. "Yes," I replied. "But you were never the machine." 6 months later, Whitaker was indicted. Victoria pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation. Leonard testified and entered witness protection. Several PAC networks were dismantled. Federal zoning contracts were restructured under new transparency laws. Whitmore Developments survived.
Barely.
But it survived differently. No political leverage. No offshore shells. No silent arrangements. I declined the CEO position. Instead, I accepted controlling ownership and appointed an independent ethics board with full oversight authority. Mark stayed. Under watch. Under oath. Under change. As for me, I kept my small legal aid office in Brooklyn. Because power without perspective is what built the rot in the first place. I returned to Chicago once more. South Halsted District. The redevelopment was finally completed. Affordable housing units. Local grocery stores reopened. Community centers funded transparently. No hidden transfers. No backroom leverage. Just contracts. And oversight. I stood near the completed building and watched families move in. A little girl ran past holding a snow globe from a gift shop nearby. For a second, my chest tightened. Empires start with views, but they survive on integrity. That evening, I visited my father's grave in Queens. The air was calm. No storm. No chaos. Just quiet. "I didn't protect your name," I said softly. I told the truth. The wind moved gently through the trees. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. Or betrayal. Just clarity. My father had been ambitious.
Brilliant. Flawed.
Victoria had been strategic. Ruthless. Unchecked. Whitaker had been powerful. Protected. Until he wasn't. The machine wasn't invincible. It just relied on silence. And silence breaks when someone refuses to protect comfort over truth. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. My heart paused for a fraction of a second. Then I opened it. A single message. "You didn't burn it down. You rebuilt it." No follow-up. No signature. Just that. I looked back at the skyline in the distance. "You're not in the will." Victoria had smirked at the funeral. She was wrong. I wasn't in the will. I was in the reckoning. And sometimes, that's worth more than inheritance.